October 17th, 8:42 p.m. A small kitchen lit by a single overhead bulb. The hum of the refrigerator fills the silence between sentences. Porcelain plates rest untouched on the table. Across from you, someone is waiting, not aggressively, not even impatiently, just waiting. You can feel it, the familiar expectation in the air, the invisible request. Explain why you decline the invitation, why you're changing direction, why you don't feel the same way anymore, why your voice sounds different tonight. In the past, you would have rushed to fill this space. You would have softened your tone, added context, built bridges of reassurance so no one had to feel uncertain around you. Your sentences would have curved at the edges, careful not to bruise. But tonight, something unfamiliar holds you still. You don't reach for justification. You don't scramble to clarify. You let the sentence end where it ended. And the silence that follows is not empty, it is charged. Across the table, the other person shifts in their seat. The air tightens. You can almost hear the old version of yourself packing inside your chest, urging you to smooth this over, to fix it, to make yourself legible again. But you don't. You take a breath, slow, unapologetic. And in that breath, something subtle rearranges itself. From a Jungian perspective, there comes a stage in psychological maturation when the personality begins withdrawing projections it once depended on. Approval, agreement, being understood. For years, these were not weaknesses, they were survival tools, ways to remain connected, ways to remain safe. But survival strategies, when carried too long, start to cost something. Energy. Identity. Silence settles between you and the other person like a third presence at the table. It is uncomfortable, but it is also clean, undistorted. For the first time, you are not managing their perception of you. You are simply there. The strange part is not that you stopped explaining. It's that you don't feel guilty about it. This is how it begins. Not with a confrontation, not with a speech, but with a quiet refusal to overtranslate yourself. You can almost feel the architecture shifting beneath the surface, beams being repositioned, foundations reinforced. No one else can see it. From the outside, it looks like distance, coldness perhaps. But inside, something steadier is forming. Carl Jung believed that individuation, the becoming of oneself, requires a gradual withdrawal from collective expectations. Not rebellion, not isolation, but a subtle reclamation of psychic territory. You are no longer offering explanations as proof of worth. And that changes everything. The conversation at the table eventually moves on, it always does. Humans adapt quickly to new emotional climates, but something irreversible has occurred. You discovered that the world did not collapse when you withheld clarification. You discovered that misunderstanding does not equal danger. And perhaps most unsettling of all, you discovered that you can survive being misread. That realization is quiet, almost invisible, but it lands with weight. Later that night, alone in your room, you replay the moment, not with anxiety but with curiosity. There was restraint in you that felt unfamiliar, powerful, clean. Where did that come from? The psyche does not announce its evolutions, it alters you in increments, a sentence not said, a defense not mounted, a boundary not explained twice. In childhood, explanation was currency, it kept relationships stable, it ensured acceptance. You learned early that if people understood you, they would stay. But maturity complicates that belief. Sometimes being understood requires shrinking. And sometimes silence is the first sign you are done shrinking. The question lingers as you turn off the light. Is this detachment? Or is something deeper consolidating, something that no longer negotiates its existence? Outside, the city continues without noticing your shift. Cars pass, windows glow, conversations happen in other kitchens. No one marks this as a milestone. But inside you, a line has been crossed. You did not explain yourself. And you did not disappear. That changes the rules. But what exactly is this silence building? The next morning, 6:13, a pale gray light leaks through the curtains. You wake before the alarm. For a few seconds you lie still, suspended between sleep and awareness, and then it returns, not anxiety, not regret. A steadiness. There is no mental draft of an apology forming, no imaginary conversation where you clarify what you meant, no urge to repair a tension that may not even exist. This is new. For years, your mornings began with invisible negotiations, rehearsing, adjusting tone, preparing explanations in advance. You anticipated questions before they were asked, smoothed edges before anyone could feel them. It felt responsible, considerate, mature. But beneath that surface, something else was happening. You were spending energy preemptively defending a self that hadn't been attacked. From a Jungian perspective, this is how the persona operates. The social mask, the adaptive identity shaped by environment and expectation. It is not false, it is necessary, but over time it can grow overextended, protecting against dangers that are no longer present. And protection, when unnecessary, becomes confinement. You sit up in bed, the room is quiet, you notice something subtle, your body feels lighter. The absence of explanation has freed something. It's not dramatic, there's no triumphant soundtrack, just a quiet redistribution of energy. The energy once used to secure approval is now unassigned. And unassigned energy does something remarkable. It begins to consolidate. Later that day at work, a colleague questions your decision in a meeting. The room smells faintly of dry erase markers and burnt coffee. Eyes turn toward you. There it is again, the familiar opening, the social doorway where you would normally step in and over-elaborate, provide context, offer disclaimers, cushion your stance so it lands softly. You answer the question directly. Concise, clear. And then you stop. The silence afterward stretches a beat too long. Someone shifts papers, someone clears their throat. You feel it, the gravitational pull to add more. But you don't. Because you're beginning to understand something dangerous and liberating at the same time. Not every pause requires rescue. Carl Jung believed that as the psyche matures, it begins integrating aspects once disowned: assertiveness, boundaries, autonomy. Traits that earlier felt threatening to attachment now become essential to identity. What you once feared as selfishness is revealing itself as structural integrity. In the past, you explained yourself because you feared being perceived as wrong. Now, you are beginning to tolerate being perceived as incomplete. There is a difference. Explaining often comes from a subtle panic, a need to control interpretation, but interpretation belongs to others, always has. You are simply withdrawing from the labor of managing it. By the afternoon, you notice something else. Conversations feel shorter, cleaner, you're not drained by them. There's more attention left over. And in that surplus, an unfamiliar sensation emerges: self-observation. When you are not busy justifying yourself, you can actually hear yourself. Your preferences sound clearer, your boundaries sharper, your internal voice steadier. Silence, it turns out, amplifies what explanation used to blur. But this shift is not without consequence. In the evening, a message arrives: you've been distant lately. You read it once, twice. The old reflex stirs to reassure, to unpack, to narrate your internal state in a way that makes it digestible for someone else. Your thumb hovers over the keyboard. Then stops. You ask yourself a question you've never asked before. Is explanation necessary here, or am I afraid of their discomfort? That distinction feels razor thin. From a Jungian perspective, individuation often requires tolerating projection. When you stop over-explaining, others may project motives onto your silence, arrogance, indifference, withdrawal. But projection is not truth. It is simply the psyche trying to fill space it doesn't control. You put the phone down. Not to ignore, not to punish, but to feel the discomfort fully. It pulses in your chest, a mild guilt, a tremor of old programming. But beneath it, something stronger. An emerging center of gravity. You are realizing that constant explanation was not humility. It was fear disguised as harmony. And fear, once seen clearly, loses authority. Later that night, as you wash dishes in the sink, the water running warm over your hands, a thought surfaces. If I am no longer spending energy on securing approval, what will that energy become? The question lingers. Because reclaimed energy does not vanish. It builds. But what exactly is it constructing inside you? November 2nd, 9:27 p.m. Rain against the windows, the room lit only by a floor lamp in the corner. You're sitting alone. Not scrolling, not distracting yourself, just sitting. There was a time when silence like this felt threatening, as if something unresolved would surface the moment external noise disappeared, but tonight the quiet feels different, denser, almost structural. Earlier in the day, someone misinterpreted your decision. You saw it in their expression, the subtle narrowing of the eyes, the recalibration of tone. They had drawn a conclusion about you. And you let them keep it. No correction, no clarifying follow-up, no gentle "that's not what I meant." You felt the misunderstanding land, and you remained intact. That's new. From a Jungian perspective, this is the slow integration of the self, the deeper organizing center of the psyche that exists beyond the persona. When you stop compulsively managing how you're perceived, you begin shifting allegiance from outer approval to inner alignment. And that shift is not loud. It feels like restraint. You walk to the window, the glass is cool under your fingertips. Outside, headlights move through rain like drifting constellations. Something is stabilizing inside you. For years, your identity was partially assembled through feedback loops. Their reactions informed your shape. Their comfort influenced your tone. You became skilled at adjusting in real time, a subtle emotional strategist. It kept things smooth. But smoothness required constant vigilance. Now without that vigilance there is space. And in that space an unfamiliar experience begins to form, solidity. You notice it in small ways. When someone disagrees, your pulse doesn't spike. When someone withdraws, you don't chase. When someone labels you inaccurately, you don't immediately dismantle the label. Instead, you observe. As if you're standing behind your own reactions, watching them with curiosity rather than panic. Carl Jung believed that psychological growth often feels like isolation at first. When you detach from collective patterns, there's a phase where you feel strangely separate, not disconnected, but no longer merged. This is that phase. It can look like distance to others, but inside it feels like alignment. The silence you've chosen is not emptiness. It is load-bearing. You begin to sense that every unspoken defense has reinforced something unseen, like beams laid beneath the floorboards of your identity. No one applauds this construction. No one even notices it. But you feel the weight it can now hold. There's a moment later that evening. A memory surfaces, a younger version of you, maybe 15, maybe 22, explaining yourself through tears, trying desperately to be understood, believing that clarity guaranteed connection. You feel tenderness for that version. They weren't weak. They were surviving. But survival required visibility. Maturity, you're learning, sometimes requires opacity. Not secrecy, not dishonesty, but the quiet confidence that not everyone needs access to your internal world to validate its existence. You sit back down, the rain continues. A realization moves through you, slow and irreversible. When you stopped explaining yourself, you didn't become smaller. You became less available for negotiation. And that changes how others approach you. Already, you've noticed subtle recalibrations. Some people lean in with more respect. Others step back, unsettled by the absence of emotional cushioning. Both reactions tell you something. When you withdraw unnecessary explanation, you disrupt old dynamics. You are no longer signaling, "I will adjust until this feels comfortable for you." You are signaling, "I am steady, meet me here if you can." And that steadiness, that is what's being built. But steadiness has a cost. Because once you inhabit it, you can't unknow it. You can't return to over-explaining without feeling the fracture inside. You can't abandon your own silence without sensing the betrayal. There is grief in that realization. Some relationships were sustained by your constant translation. Without it, they may thin. You feel that possibility tonight. And yet, beneath the grief, something stronger anchors you. Self-trust. Not the loud kind, not bravado, but a quiet internal nod that says, "I know why I chose this." The world outside continues to hum, rain softens, the city breathes. Inside, the architecture completes another layer. You are no longer explaining yourself. And what that silence is building is a center no one else can dismantle. But what happens when that center is finally tested? December 11th, 7:18 p.m. A crowded living room, low music, glasses clinking. The air smells like citrus and perfume. Laughter rises in uneven bursts around the room. You stand near the edge of it all, listening more than speaking. Across the room, someone you've known for years is telling a story about you. Not malicious, not cruel, but simplified. They describe you as intense lately, as harder to read. The group laughs softly, nodding in mild agreement. It's framed as light observation. Still, you feel it. The old reflex ignites instantly. Step in, clarify, soften the narrative. Offer context so you're not misunderstood in your own absence. Reclaim the version of you that feels safer. Your body even leans forward slightly. Then it stops. You watch the scene unfold as if from a few inches behind your eyes. From a Jungian perspective, this is the confrontation with the shadow of your former self, the part that equated visibility with safety, the part that believed misinterpretation was a threat to belonging. You feel the flicker of that fear, but something steadier stands behind it now. You don't interrupt. You don't correct. You let the incomplete version of you exist in the room without rushing to edit it. A strange calm settles into your spine. The conversation moves on, the story dissolves into another topic. No one seems disturbed by your silence. And in that moment, a truth crystallizes. Most people are not studying you as closely as you once believed. They are interpreting you through their own filters, their own needs, their own expectations. And your endless explanations never fully controlled that. They only exhausted you. You step outside onto the balcony. Cold air presses against your skin, the city below glows in scattered amber lights. Your breath fogs in front of you. This is the test. Not whether you can defend yourself, but whether you can remain whole when you don't. Carl Jung believed that individuation requires the courage to stand apart from collective projections. When you stop managing how you're seen, others must confront their own assumptions without your assistance. Some will feel unsettled, because your silence removes the script they're used to reading. You lean against the railing. There's grief here, let's not romanticize it. When you stop over-explaining, you risk being perceived as distant, arrogant, detached. You risk losing the version of yourself that was easily digestible. And some people preferred that version. You can almost feel the subtle shift happening in certain relationships, a recalibration, not necessarily rejection, but uncertainty. The question hovers. Is this worth it? You close your eyes for a moment. Inside, there's no chaos, no frantic negotiation. Just a steady presence. This is what's been building. Not detachment. Not indifference. But an internal authority that does not scramble under scrutiny. You realize something quietly radical. When you stopped explaining yourself, you stopped auditioning for acceptance. And without that audition, something else emerged: self-selection. You are no longer trying to convince everyone of your depth. You are allowing those who recognize it to stay. That realization changes the geometry of your life. Fewer frantic corrections. Fewer emotional overextensions. More stillness. And in that stillness, a deeper intimacy becomes possible, not with everyone but with those who can meet silence without panicking. You open your eyes. Inside the living room, the music shifts, someone laughs loudly, life continues. But you feel different standing here. Heavier in a grounded way. As if gravity itself has increased within you. The silence you've been practicing is no longer fragile. It can withstand misinterpretation. It can withstand projection. It can withstand being called different. And perhaps that's the final transformation. You no longer need to be fully understood to feel secure. You just need to be aligned. The balcony door slides open behind you. Someone steps out, hesitant. Hey, they say softly, you've changed. You meet their eyes. There's no rush to explain. Only a calm recognition. Yes, you reply. And this time you let that be enough.